an ambitious young woman loved by the community.
Everyone was friends with Terry.
She was hardworking, had 2 jobs.
By 21, she owned a home.
Has her future ripped away.
This was a particularly brutal attack.
They stabbed her multiple times on that road.
This would have been a horrifying death.
Police discover unwanted admirers prone to violence.
He was covered in blood and had blood in his hair.
And always carrying a knife.
He was jealous and said that he'd kill her.
But the evidence leads nowhere.
The investigation is getting older and older and harder to solve.
I didn't think we were going to get an answer for this case.
Until a surprise breakthrough.
I was beyond excited. I actually shouted, "Oh my God," at my desk.
Points to a killer off the radar. Right away, I'm like, who's that guy?
Why? Why did someone do this?
People said, oh no, he wouldn't kill anybody, but he had this pretend life.
He had no criminal record. He did not emerge as a likely suspect at all.
Germantown, Wisconsin, a sleepy village celebrated as one of the best places to live in America.
I grew up in Germantown. It's, a small community. I would ride my bike to the store for my mom. It was not someplace that you were afraid of.
Germantown is a small town near Milwaukee, a lot of farmland, a lot of open spaces, just a lot of dairy farming, some factories, and homes.
But on May 28th, 1999, this bedroom community wakes to a horrific crime.
Yeah, we're having a body up here on River Lane. There's a green car there, green Pontiac car. She's laying on the curb. There's blood on the road.
I got a phone call that there was a suspected homicide in the industrial park. I immediately went to the crime scene. I saw a vehicle on the side of the road facing west, a large amount of blood in the roadway. I observed what appeared to be footwear impressions in blood. I saw what appeared to be drag marks of blood, 2 large pools of blood, and alongside the vehicle was a female lying face down. When we rolled her over, she had a significant number of what appeared to be stab wounds on her front. She had stab wounds on both sides of her neck.
She had some blood on her hands. And, we're always hoping that there's a fight so she can either scratch the attacker. So the hands were swabbed for DNA.
We proceeded with the perspective. She may have not been expecting it, and things went south very, very fast. I do believe there was rage in this case.
That usually is indicative of personal, that they know each other, and it's almost to the point of overkill. Who was this woman who had been so savagely murdered? Investigators looked to the victim's car for answers.
The vehicle itself appeared to be parked in a reasonable manner alongside the road.
Her car keys were by her body, so she probably had them when she got out of her car and then dropped them in the fight.
The keys indicated that she willingly got out of the vehicle and talked to someone, and then the homicide occurred. The stabbing continued not only in the roadway, but on the grass at 2 different locations, and then it looked like it may have occurred alongside the vehicle.
There's blood spatter and cast off on her wheel, on her hood, on her fender, and up on her windshield.
Her purse was in the vehicle. There was $200 in her purse.
This was not a robbery. This was something else. After finding a driver's license, police determined the victim is 22-year-old Teresa Wesolowski.
Out on the road, there was tire acceleration marks leading away from the pool of blood in the roadway, as if you put your foot on the accelerator and peeled out, confirming to us that there was another vehicle in front of her where she was more than likely stabbed.
Police comb the crime scene, but no murder weapon is found. As detectives try to make sense of what happened to Teresa, her lifelong best friend Michelle gets a call.
Terry's brother called, and it was early. Not that it was out of the ordinary, because we were all so close. And so I answered, and he's like, "Michelle, Terry never came home last night." Well, I'm going to start calling police departments. And Germantown said, "We have her name on file. You'll have to come and speak to a detective."
Michelle and Teresa's brother rushed to the station. They had last seen Teresa the day before when she left for work.
I'll never forget the officers in front of me. And I said, "Where is she?" And he said, "I'm sorry, she's gone." And I just remember screaming, "Someone just told me my friend is gone. What does gone mean?"
Born in Germantown, Wisconsin, Teresa Wesolowski grew up an outgoing girl with a magnetic personality.
Everyone was friends with Terry. We became best friends in 6th grade, and from that moment on, we were inseparable. We were sisters. There were not many people that called her Teresa. She was always Terry. I think the only time that I remember her being called Teresa was when her mom was mad. When we had done something wrong. It was always just her and I on the playground. I mean, we were just always, I want to say, running the neighborhood, you know? I can't remember a weekend that I wasn't at her house.
As she got older, Teresa was fiercely independent, buying a car at 16 and moving out on her own at 18.
She was working at Cousins Subs in Mequon, and she would go there at 7 a.m., and she would get done by 1, and she would head over to Stone Container, and she would work till 11 o'clock at night.
Despite a heavy work schedule, Teresa loved to be social.
Oh, Terry was fun. You know, Terry liked attention, and she definitely liked the attention from men. Men just seemed more attracted to her. She was young, she was beautiful. Any guy would have wanted that.
How, then, did someone so driven and well-liked meet such a horrible fate?
Young female, you know, at the beginning of her life, getting things together, and it's ended.
Back at the station, investigators reach out to Teresa's family and friends to piece together the hours leading up to her death. Her shift ended at 11, and the last that anybody saw of her that we know of was that she got into her vehicle and left that parking lot. During the interviews, detectives get their first tip.
That morning, the officers received a contact from somebody at the Department of Public Works. They had a channel on the same radio system that the police department was on, so they would know that the homicide occurred. They indicated that somebody driving a truck pulled into the parking lot. An individual got out, and they said that he was covered in blood and had blood in his hair.
Is this man somehow connected to the crime scene? Detectives head over to interview the witnesses, who tell police they'd never seen the man before.
We were told the truck driver asked if there was a hospital nearby, and then he indicated now he'd just clean up in the bathroom, which he did, and then left.
It's very common that the person who's doing the attacking gets stabbed too or cuts himself, especially if there's a struggle. Now we had a suspect, a viable suspect, and now we needed to find that person to figure out what happened. Coming up, detectives uncover suspects with violent tendencies.
He said he can cut people like paper. He could become abusive and violent.
And untangle a web of deception.
Well, he was never married. He didn't have any kids.
He said, "I don't want to be a snitch," leading them to a suspect they never imagined. We really felt that we had turned a corner on this case.
It was almost surreal. It got me because it wasn't anyone I knew.
Hours after finding Teresa Wesolowski stabbed to death at the side of the road, police search for a man seen covered in blood at a nearby public works building.
We had a very good police artist. He did a sketch of the individual based on the statements from the witnesses, put the word out there into the community.
While police wait for leads on the bloody man, they shift their attention to Teresa's home to look for clues.
I went down to Teresa's house. We made a search of the residence. I checked the shoes in the residence against the footwear impression at the crime scene. None of them matched. So the footwear impression at the scene were Teresa's.
Investigators talked to Teresa's family and friends, hoping to learn more about her. They learned she was dating someone named Charlie.
Charlie was a young man who didn't hold down a lot of jobs very well. He was staying at his parents' house. They had been dating for a few months prior to her homicide.
We had known Charlie since grade school. We grew up with Charlie. He was 3 years older than us.
We had some people that we interviewed that said they fought a lot or she wanted to break up with him.
I didn't think Charlie was good for anyone. In Terry's mind, he was temporary.
A couple of weeks before her homicide, we found out that he borrowed her car while she was at work and failed to pick her up. She walked to the tavern, and then they got in a bit of an argument, and she finally said enough is enough.
Friends worried how Charlie might react linked to Teresa moving on.
Some of the people indicated that Teresa told them this boyfriend was jealous and said that if he caught her going out with somebody else, he'd kill her.
He said, give me 2 weeks and you won't have your friend anymore. You're like, what do you mean I won't have my friend?
So that it raises a flag that we have to determine if it got worse after that or was it just a one evening spat.
You know, stabbing is very personal. That usually is indicative that they know each other.
Why did someone do this? What did she do that was so bad that someone had to stab her repeatedly in this crime of passion?
Police immediately bring Charlie in for questioning.
Charlie was very nervous and seemed to act like he didn't really want to be there.
When police ask Charlie where he was the night of the murder, he says he was home. He lived in the basement of his parents' house, and he was alibied by his mother. I remember the mother claiming there's no way he could get out of this house without me hearing it.
However, he slept in the basement, which the patio door opens up from the basement outside, so he could leave the house without his parents knowing. At times, Teresa got off of work at 11 at night, and she's found in the morning at 5 or 6 o'clock. So his alibi has weaknesses. It's not airtight.
Could Charlie have snuck out, driven to see Teresa, and murdered her?
Did Charlie have access to a car? He borrowed cars from people a lot. So, could he have had a car that night? Yeah, he could have. The homicide's probably less than 5 miles from his house.
Police look to the tire track evidence.
The tire tracks at the scene were measured and documented. I made contact with the Michigan State Police, who have a database of vehicles. They came back with a list of vehicles based on manufacturer specifications that could have created that. And it's quite a large list.
While detectives continue to investigate Charlie, they also turn to the box factory where Teresa worked. Whenever you have a homicide like this and it's right down the road from where she worked, obviously your biggest pool of suspects has to be the guys she worked with. There was a fair number of men that were interested in her, and there were some that had dated her. There were some that wanted to date her.
It wasn't like she was going out and dating them. She just liked hanging out with them.
So we went to the factory to determine who had contact with Teresa, and is there anything that stands out and points to any particular individual as possibly having done this.
We interviewed one of her co-workers named Mark Lebecki. Mark Lebecki worked the same shift as Teresa. Mark was known as a soft-spoken but well-liked guy at the factory.
He's a very quiet individual, very reserved. Most people would describe him as very mellow.
Working just a few machines away from each other, Mark and Teresa had become close. He talked to her at work. He was a nice, likable person.
And it got to the point where they developed kind of a friendship.
Unlike the men at the factory who wanted to date Teresa, Mark preferred sharing stories about his family. Mark Lebecki told Teresa that he had a couple kids and he kept photos of them in his wallet. He would show them to Teresa and say, "These are my kids."
He talked to her enough to create a relationship that she felt the need to go and talk to him when he needed a friend.
Mark tells police he is saddened by Teresa's death. He also remembers something was off with her the night she died. He indicated that he saw her that night of the homicide and commented that it looked like she was having a bad day, and she said, yeah, something was jamming in her machine.
She just laughed it off and moved on.
Having no reason to question Mark further, police turned to coworkers with a less amicable relationship with Teresa.
There were some statements from individuals that they observed her having an argument with somebody by the vehicle before the night of the homicide.
The man Teresa was arguing with is identified as her coworker, Isaac Alvarez. When police dig into his background, they find some troubling details. Isaac Alvarez was just a little weird, and he always carried a knife.
At one point, he was upset with a coworker, and he said, "I'm going to cut that cracker, or I'm going to knife that bitch." He told somebody else that, he can cut people like paper.
His comments about cutting up a supervisor, those are the comments that we heard, and those are the comments that kept our interest in him. To find out more, police look into Isaac's personal life.
His ex-wife indicated that he did have a knife he always kept on his belt, and she indicated that he could become abusive and violent after one drink.
Police bring in Isaac to shed light on his relationship with Teresa and why they were arguing at work.
And in talking to him about Teresa, you could see the emotion coming out of him. This was very stressful for him. That's also the type of stressor that might cause somebody to commit a homicide.
Then, Isaac reveals something else.
He did ask Teresa if she wanted to meet him for a drink, and Teresa, being who Teresa was, she didn't say, "No way." She said, "Well, we'll see." He shows up and she's not there. Is that rejection?
Had Teresa's rejection sent Isaac into a murderous rage? We asked Isaac to take a polygraph. Because of Isaac's strange behaviors, outbursts, maybe prone to violence, and always carrying a knife, and he was seen in the parking lot area that night, he was on our main suspect list. While investigating the stabbing death of Teresa Wesolowski, police focus on her co-workers.
She's working in a factory populated by mostly men. That sets up a scenario where you're going to have people trying to ask her out. She was outgoing and she was friendly, so people could perceive that as being led on. In fact, she was probably just being nice.
She always tried to let him down easy. She would always be like, "Well, I don't want to hurt his feelings." She just wanted to make sure that they still wanted to be her friend.
At the police station, investigators interview one of those workers, Isaac Alvarez. Witnesses saw Isaac argue with Teresa before the night of her death.
Isaac's alibi, when he was interviewed, he was home. He lives with a 50-plus-year-old lady. His story is he went to bed at 9 o'clock, and he may have had a conversation with her when she came home, but he doesn't recall. She says she had a conversation with him 11:15, 11:30 at night, and she thought it was around 1 o'clock when he went to bed. It's a little different than his story. Well, in his case, is that person willing to lie for you? We don't know. So that's not an airtight alibi.
Police convince Isaac to take a polygraph. He was somewhat deceptive and not answering the questions in the proper manner, and so we believe that he was trying to skew the results of the polygraph.
You couldn't get a good answer from him.
So because of that, it was ruled inconclusive. Without any hard evidence, police can't charge Isaac for the crime. While detectives look for more leads, Teresa's autopsy report arrives.
Based on the injury patterns, the attack was a surprise attack because we did not see a significant amount of defensive type injuries. And then she was pinned in a prone or face-down position. I individually identified and labeled 47 separate stab wounds. This would have been a horrifying death for any individual.
As police review evidence, they follow up on the lead on the bloody man from the Department of Public Works. They had a sketch made of this unknown person that stopped at the garage to wash up.
We put it out there. The individual didn't come forward. It was out in the press. It was in the newspaper. I did go back and re-interview the witnesses, but nothing came back of evidentiary value.
Police also continue interviewing Teresa's friends.
I always protected Terry. So when she was killed, I had no purpose anymore. And so I gave my all to whatever they needed. It was hours and hours and hours of interviews with the police, trying to give them everything that I knew about every person we had ever hung out with, for me to help them to hopefully find who did this.
One of the people detectives learn about is Jerry Kirkpatrick.
So Jerry Kirkpatrick was a delivery guy to Cousins where Teresa worked.
Friends say Jerry asked Teresa out numerous times.
I don't think she was looking to have a relationship with him. He was definitely interested in her.
That's the indication that we got, that he was pursuing her more than she was pursuing him.
Police learn about one encounter with Jerry that left Teresa unsettled.
I thought I saw Jerry before she died at the club, just watching us. And it gave me this feeling like, why is he here? Like, he shouldn't know we're here. Why is he standing off in the shadows? It was a very creepy feeling.
So the question is Jerry stalking her?
But then, Teresa's friends point out something else disturbing about Jerry.
They thought he might be similar to the picture of the person that was at the Department of Public Works. The drawing looked like him.
Officers immediately interviewed Jerry at his home. Jerry denies he is the man in the sketch. He claims he was at a bar with his stepbrother the night of Teresa's murder, then went home before midnight.
There was alibi information that was confirming of the statement. When he got home, he called for a pizza to be delivered, and that was confirmed subsequently with phone records. He let us look at his vehicle. We examined the interior or exterior. Nothing of evidentiary value was located in that examination.
Then, investigators make a startling discovery.
There were knives found at Jerry Kirkpatrick's residence.
A lot of times we'd ask people, do you have knives? And can we see those knives? Do you mind if we'd have them tested? A lot of times that's done for reaction. So he presents 4 or 5 knives. He did let us look at them when we were at the house. We even submitted them to the crime lab to have it analyzed.
While investigators wait for results, Jerry's landlord delivers some alarming news.
What happens within the next few days is he talks to his landlord about breaking his lease.
Jerry Kirkpatrick decided to move out of town, and that's in the midst of being interviewed and investigation, so right away that raises our suspicion.
Was Jerry trying to give detectives the slip?
It is clearly a red flag, and we have to look at that behavior as being possibly flight behavior. So we want to find out.
While investigating Jerry Kirkpatrick for the brutal stabbing of 22-year-old Teresa Wesolowski, detectives learn from Jerry's landlord he's about to skip town.
The landlord knew the police were talking to Jerry. We were actually notified by the Milwaukee Police Department because the landlord had thought, hey, this is odd, and called them. He says he's going to move to Tennessee. One of the aspects you look at in a homicide, is there any flight behavior after the homicide? Well, breaking your lease and moving to Tennessee might be described as flight behavior. We did confirm that he put money on a place on that Friday after the homicide.
But when investigators get the lab results back on Jerry's knives, the case takes a frustrating turn.
Nothing back of evidentiary value.
Somebody having a collection of knives is not that uncommon, especially in Wisconsin. And the quick move that he made is something strange, but, there's nothing we can do about it. If he wants to move, he can move.
Police have one more lead to follow. Jerry's resemblance to the bloody man at the Public Works building.
He fit that description. We actually did an in-person lineup with Jerry, and he was not picked out by the individuals that observed this person driving the truck.
That person was never identified and never located.
Without any hard evidence linking Jerry to the murder, police have to let him go. Weeks go by, and investigators worry the case will grow cold.
We're doing interviews. Some people we're re-interviewing. But as time moves on, the investigation is getting older and older and harder to solve.
As the weeks turn into months, investigators doggedly work the case.
Well, I technically would have retired about 5 years before I did. A lot of it is to bring justice for the victim, but also to bring some sort of resolution or closure for the family.
The police kept telling me that it was someone close to her because of the horrific nature of it. I alienated myself from people because I just didn't know who I could or couldn't trust.
Months turn into years, but Teresa's loved ones make sure she's not forgotten.
Once a year on the date of the murder, the families would come up and hold vigils. It was a way for the family to try to say that we're still fighting to resolve this case.
But we use it as a way of seeing who is showing up, and maybe more importantly, who isn't showing up.
Nothing seems out of the ordinary until 2005, 6 years after the murder, when Teresa's family notices something unusual.
Her mom had called me and said, "Did you happen to go out and leave flowers for Terry?" And I said, "No, I didn't."
These arrangements showed up, and they checked around and didn't know who put them there. So that always leads you to believe, is there somebody out there that's feeling guilty about committing a homicide and leaving something on a gravesite?
We had a camera installed to see if maybe we could identify the next time somebody did something like that. But we didn't capture any image or anything.
For detectives, it's another dead end. But then, with the investigation on the brink of going cold, a new forensic technology turns this 6-year-old case red hot.
In 2005, I got a contact from the Wisconsin Crime Lab, and Patty said, hey, I want you to submit this list of items for us to analyze using a technique called YSTR DNA testing.
With YSTR DNA testing, it allows us to find a very small amount of Y chromosome male DNA and a very large amount of DNA from a female source. So it's like finding that single grain of salt in a large bag of sugar.
Early on, when we had the blood evidence on Teresa's hands tested, it all came back as her DNA. That's a problem because it's not giving us a lead. What happens if we strip away all the X chromosomes? If she's a female and that's all her blood, there should be nothing left.
The analyst retests the swabs of Teresa's hands for male DNA.
The first thing I did was look at the previously run DNA samples to see if there was any Y chromosome DNA present in those. All of a sudden, all the DNA types I developed on her hands are matching a known standard for male DNA. And it was incredible. I contacted Detective Yogers for samples of DNA from individuals known to be connected to the case.
And now we're going to go pick DNA samples from all of our suspects. We took what probably be our 25 top suspects, nearest and dearest, ex-boyfriend, boyfriend, that type of thing. That first group was a 0.
Undeterred, investigators submit more samples.
We went back to the list and got a second group.
We were testing people that were ancillary people. We had DNA from officers at the crime scene that we used to eliminate.
I didn't think we were going to get an answer for this case.
Then, after over 40 samples, a breakthrough.
The testing came back and only one person matched the Y chromosome found mixed into the blood on Teresa's hand.
Detective Yokers called me and said, you're not going to believe this, the last guy that I swabbed is the guy that has a positive match on that DNA.
After 7 years investigating the murder of Teresa Wesolowski, detectives have now matched DNA from the scene to one of their suspects.
I was beyond excited. I actually shouted, "Oh my God," at my desk. We had a match from the DNA on Teresa's hands to Mark Lebecki.
Right away, I'm like, who's that guy?
Mark Lebecki is a co-worker of Teresa's. Mark Lebecki was one of the individuals that was interviewed by the officers. His statement was that he and Teresa were friendly at the factory.
So the murder occurs, and Mark Lebecki kept working there and was still working there.
Before they approach Mark, detectives need more than just the DNA evidence.
Now, the other heavy lifting starts because even the DNA evidence isn't going to stand on its own. So we need to bring all these other factors into play in building a case that's sufficient for the DA to charge.
First, detectives go back to the factory to dig deeper into Mark's background.
Some people said, oh, no, Mark Lebecki, he wouldn't kill anybody. He's just a puppy. He would show people pictures of little girls, and he said they were his daughters. What do you think I should get him for Christmas or birthday, whatever?
When detectives look closer, they discover Mark isn't all he claims to be.
Well, he was never married. He didn't have any kids. So this is just, weird. He had this, pretend life.
Mark Lebecki was pretty much a loner, lived with his parents in a mobile home in a rural area, apparently liked to watch television, play video games.
I think it was just a big fantasy with him, a big game to try to fit in.
What else had Mark been hiding?
We had one person that said that Mark had asked her what she thought he could do to better his chances with going out with Teresa. So he clearly had a focus on her.
Detectives revisit evidence from the crime scene, starting with the bloody boot prints.
The problem with identifying somebody with a common shoe is so many of them. There could be millions of those shoes made. I contact a person in Scottsdale, Arizona, the detective in their forensic unit, and he had the foremost outsold databases that existed. And he said, that is a Texas deer, outsole. Early in the investigation, we had information about the employees being supplied shoes or they could purchase shoes from the store.
When police search factory records, they make a crucial discovery.
And we determined that Mark Lebicki had submitted a receipt for a Texas steer shoe.
Next, investigators turn to the tire tracks left at the scene.
So we took 56 people out of our investigation and identified the vehicles that were registered to them at the time of the homicide. 5 individuals had vehicles that were able to make that mark at the scene. One of them was Mark Lebicki.
With the evidence piling up, detectives ask Mark to come down to the police department for an interview.
He was quiet. He answered the questions. He was confident, I would say.
That confidence doesn't last long.
When he finds out that his DNA is on her hands, he then starts to try and explain why they are there. What started out as I just talked to her at the door is I didn't talk to her then, I talked to her at a break, and we may have hugged.
Detectives confront Mark with the evidence.
I told him the car, wheel track matches. Your DNA is found on her hands, and a boot that you wear is in the blood, footwear impression on the road. So, we're looking at you. You need to start explaining some of this stuff.
Now, it's Mark's turn to drop a bombshell on police.
He said, I don't want to get anyone else in trouble. I don't want to be a snitch. Then he mentioned this guy named Tom Thompson.
Tom Thompson worked at the factory with Mark and Teresa.
At the time of the homicide, the officers that went up and did the canvass at the factory did speak with Tom Thompson. His statement to them was that he knew Teresa. He wasn't necessarily friends with Teresa. They never dated, anything like that.
Mark tells them what happened the night of the murder.
Mark said he stopped on the side of the road to buy some cocaine from Thompson.
He said that when he got up there was a vehicle already parked in front where he parked, and Tom Thompson walked up to his vehicle.
So Thompson goes and sits in the back seat. Mark said, I am doing the cocaine in the front of the seat.
According to him, Teresa gets in the back seat and gets in an argument with Tom, and he proceeds to stab her. Mark says he only hears thumping and movement in the back seat.
Now it's time to start poking holes in the story. You should not be stabbed 40-some times in the back seat of someone's car and they not know what's going on. The whole interior would have been covered in blood. So that's out right there.
Mark says Teresa flops out of there onto the ground. Tom Thompson continues to stab her and drags her to that location alongside the vehicle.
According to Mark, Thompson then turned on him.
Tom Thompson tell him, you keep your mouth shut, and then he let him go. So he kept his mouth shut. He didn't go to the police.
4 years later, Tom Thompson dies, but Mark keeps silent for another 3 years.
He's trying to explain how he's involved in this homicide, and the easiest thing to do is to blame it on the dead guy.
Detectives re-interview workers at the factory about Tom Thompson.
Everybody to a person said he was a health nut.
We have found no indication that he was dealing cocaine or using cocaine.
Investigators asked Teresa's friends if she used drugs.
Terry wanted nothing to do with cocaine. Nothing.
So she wouldn't have gone there to buy drugs from Tom Thompson. What was her reason for being there?
There's one last piece of evidence to examine. The car that Mark drove at the time of the murder.
We wanted that vehicle. We found it by another owner, and we ended up buying it from that guy. We brought it down to the lab and examined it for blood, hair, whatever evidence that we could. That rear seat was taken apart. It was a perforated leather, so there were holes in it. So the blood went down through the holes in that leather, and then they soaked into the foam rubber of that seat.
Does the blood belong to Teresa? It's sent to the lab for analysis.
I was very excited to call Mike Yogers and let him know I had found a possible...
10 years after 22-year-old Teresa Wesolowski is stabbed to death, detectives are waiting to see if blood found in the back of coworker Mark Lebecki's car belongs to her.
Those DNA profiles matched the DNA profile from Teresa Wesolowski.
Oh, it was significant. It was an important moment.
But what about Mark's claim that coworker Tom Thompson killed Teresa?
At this stage, and 7 years after the murder, Lebecki is implicating a man who had died 3 years earlier, but it was only Lebecki's DNA that was ever found on Teresa's body. They find blood in a cushion of the seat in Lebecki's car. They find that that's Teresa's DNA. They have his DNA, her DNA, and at that point the case was made.
That was the final thing that District Attorney needed to issue the charge. We really felt that we had turned a corner on this case.
Detective Yogers called me and he said, I just want to let you know that we are going to make an arrest. And I was so excited. I was just waiting for the news.
Detectives go to the box factory where Mark works.
We watched for him to come out of the building, and Kim and I walked up to him, and he was under arrest. I was excited. It was a good day.
Mark denies killing Teresa, so investigators are left to piece together what really happened that night.
I think Mark Lebecki was a very lonely person that probably imagined a relationship with Teresa and decided she was one. She was just being nice to people. And he probably read that for more than it was.
I think for Terry, it was more that this guy was telling him his problems at work, and she was a listener. She would listen. He wore on her heartstrings and her niceness as a person.
Then, on May 28th, 1999, Mark made his move.
I think that she was coming out of the building, and Mark, for whatever reason, convinced her to meet him. They meet at the back of the vehicle.
I think that he probably did ask her to come back to his place for the night. And when she said no, he just went on a rampage and just started stabbing her. He stabbed her multiple times on that road. Then he dragged her over to that grass. He stabbed her some more. There's blood flying up on her car. He was a monster that night.
We can only guess at it because he's not talking. We don't have to prove why he did this. We just have to prove that he did.
After the vicious stabbing, Mark returned to his normal routine.
Mark Lebecki continues to work at the factory. He doesn't make any erratic move like moving away or changing jobs. He just sort of carries on with life as he did before the murder. He had no criminal record. Mark Lebecki certainly did not emerge as a likely suspect at all. It was shocking to hear that Mark Lebecki had killed Teresa.
It was almost surreal. It got me because it wasn't anyone I knew.
At trial, Mark Lebecki enters a plea of not guilty and sticks to his story that Tom Thompson killed Teresa.
Clearly, his incentive was to try and show somebody else did it back there. But that doesn't hold up.
I don't think the jury bought that at all.
Mark is convicted of first-degree murder, and in November 2010, he is sentenced to 30 years in prison with no chance of parole.
Mark Lebecki did not admit guilt. The judge noted that Lebecki never expressed any remorse.
In his mind, he's still not guilty. And the judge even said to him, I hope that someday you will admit to yourself that you've done this, because you have done this.
The journey was long and tedious. It will never replace Teresa for the family. She was a good kid. She was moving forward with her life. She probably would have maybe...
A carer calls police concerned about a pensioner.
It appears that the lady is unresponsive. They were concerned that the circumstances weren't quite right.
The woman's dog is found alone and frightened.
Place has been ransacked. So, who's done that?
Sometimes things are not obvious to see at face value.
How much does she pay you?
There was a murder on the loose in a very quiet village where everybody knew each other.
How can the crime scene tell us the story as to what's happened?
Stop it, Karen!
We need to find out who they are. We need to catch that killer at that crime scene.
Please, open the door!
When I arrived, there were 3 police forensic vans. There was one on the side street here, One just off the pavement here and then one on the driveway there. So it's obvious that there's a very serious incident that happened in the street.
In the quiet village of Fleckney, a large police presence outside the pensioner's home quickly attracts attention.
Police weren't releasing any information initially. I came out here and spoke to people in the street. People were frightened and scared. There was no confirmation of the victim, but people obviously knew who the neighbour was.
The resident is 72-year-old Jane Hings.
We went out there to chat to the residents and the locals, and we got the picture that she was a popular figure who lived on her own with her beloved greyhound dog, Paddy. She had had a fall recently, and this meant that people in the village helped walk the dog, Paddy, when it was obviously too much for her.
I was due to go over about 10 o'clock on the Sunday, just for a chat and to pick Paddy up. And I was running late, as always, and she hadn't called me. And I thought that was really weird, so I tried calling her on the way. Didn't answer, just went straight to answer phone. Kept trying her, nothing. So just carried on over, literally pulled into like the top end of her close, and just saw loads of police cars and forensics. There was a lady just standing there with Paddy on lead. That kind of told me all I needed to know. One of the villagers that I knew had come up to me and was like, oh, you know, it's probably just like natural and all that. And I was just like, it's not, I know it's not. The amount of police that were there was quite intimidating. You don't get forensics there for just a natural cause.
Inside the bungalow, CSIs are looking for answers. The carers have formally identified the woman as Jane, but it's not yet clear how she died.
It's very difficult to determine the cause of death because there's no obvious signs. No traumatic injuries are obvious. There's no bruising around her neck that you would associate with strangulation. She doesn't have any head injuries. You have to keep an open mind. Until we know definitively, we work with a worst case scenario.
We don't know the cause of death. That means that the search of the crime scene is very open. We're not really sure what we're looking for within that crime scene.
A pathologist is called to the scene. There is evidence of a serious sexual assault.
The body itself can be treated as a crime scene. There was blood around the nose. There were grazes on her cheek. There were bruises on her arms, which indicated grip marks. These injuries suggest that there was a struggle and the victim was pinned down or held down. If someone is held down, you know, the grip marks will be very distinct, and it would mean the person had been held down for quite some time.
This is a vulnerable lady. There were defence injuries on her hands and her arms. This tended to suggest that they may have put up a struggle.
That is a major crime scene.
Jane also appears to have been burgled. Her phone, handbag, and some jewellery are missing.
The necklace and crucifix has been ripped off violently because she's got bruising on her neck. It is a violent and heartless attack. Who's done this?
Homicide detectives, one of the first things they will do will be trying to, work out what is the connection between the victim and the potential suspect pool. If it's a robbery homicide, they might think that could actually be a stranger, somebody who opportunistically broke into a property. So who do they know in the local community who might be committing robberies? Similarly, who are they known sexual predators?
What's their MO? Has one of the suspects got a preference for attacking elderly women and sexually assaulting them?
Officers go door to door. Jane's neighbours didn't see or hear anything suspicious. The team are relying on forensics to lead them to her attacker.
There's some evidence that has to be collected quickly so that you can be able to get the most reliable results. There could be DNA or some trace elements which could have been left on the body. It's very easy for this to get lost or to get contaminated as the body is being transferred, and yet it could be the most crucial evidence.
When the body's been moved from the bed, there is a small silver tongue bar found towards the lower part of the body. It was not hers. She didn't have any piercings. If it's not the victim, it's a foreign item within that crime scene.
It indicates that someone's been really close and intimate with that victim before they've died. This may well be the offenders.
We're not sure whether the sexual assault in the first instance, was that the primary motivation, or was it really the robbery and then he decided to enact a sexual attack after that? In any event, that combination is fairly unusual. It's possible that he saw her as a vulnerable person that he could control.
The tongue bar is fast-tracked for DNA testing, as CSIs look at how Jane's attacker got in.
Is it one offender? Is it more than one offender? Have they come in through the door? Have they climbed in through a window? Is there any damage Has anything been dropped within that scene or left that may link back to an offender?
CSIs find no signs of forced entry.
Then you're asking yourself the question, did the victim know the suspect?
As Jane's remains are taken from the scene, community fears intensify.
What scared the community was the fact that who would do such a thing? Jane was a 72-year-old woman who wouldn't harm a fly. If they were capable of doing this, what else were they capable of doing? The police are under immense amounts of pressure.
The police would have been concerned that this was, a dangerous offender that might go on to commit further similar attacks. Speed was of the essence in apprehending him.
Police have launched a murder inquiry after an elderly woman was found dead at her home in Fleckney. Detectives say there were signs of a disturbance in the property and forensic searches are continuing there.
Police in Leicestershire are investigating the suspicious death of a pensioner. 72-year-old Jane Hings appears to have been sexually assaulted in her bed. After finding no signs of a break-in, police suspect she knew her attacker.
In most cases, women are killed by their intimate partner or their former or current partner or lover. In just 7% of cases, the victim is a stranger to the offender.
The team's strongest lead so far is a tongue bar recovered from the scene. They suspect belongs to Jane's attacker.
We drip water onto the end of the swab. It's important to work out the best place to get the DNA. The DNA is going to be all over this tongue bar, so I'm going to hold it right at the tip with some freshly cleaned gloves, and then I'm going to take some swabs from all around this tongue bar and all of the surfaces around it.
As they wait for the results, CSIs continue to search for evidence at the scene, while detectives take a closer look at who was in Jane's life.
We look at the victim, so we create victimologies. So what I have is what's association with other people.
Jane's friends and neighbours tell the police she was a private person.
She had no close family relatives. She had lived on her own. Her life was her dog. She loved the dog.
She rescued Paddy from a rescue centre. He was very spoiled. I worked for a doggy daycare company, and because she fell over recently and she was struggling to walk Paddy, I was the one that picked him up and dropped him off every night. That led then into just come in and do this, so I helped her out in other ways like that.
A divorcee, Jane had lived in the Netherlands before moving back to Fleckney to care for her parents during their final years.
Jane was a lovely, caring lady, took pride in her appearance, always had her hair done. She had some close friends that would take her to the hairdressers and take her shopping literally every week and do those things for her. And then she got her other friends that were a bit further away that would go to church with her or visit her in hospital or go around and have fish and chips with her. I think she was happy.
She was a well-loved character in the village, and she gave money to charity even though she didn't have a lot of money to spend on herself.
Detectives discover that Jane was hospitalised 3 months ago after falling and breaking her ribs.
She's very limited in mobility. It may well be a target approach based upon her vulnerability. So now we have to focus on that.
After she came out of hospital after the fall, she needed a lot more help with things around the house and even just the little jobs that she couldn't do. She got loads of walking aids and, just things like that. So even the making a cup of tea was a bit of hard work for her. So she probably did trust people a bit more to help her because she had no choice.
Had the suspect previously worked or did some work around the house? Or is there someone who lives nearby that potentially do this kind of crime? Because most burglars are local.
Fleckney is about 9 miles south of Leicester. It's a very tight community. It's the place where everybody knows each other, but in a nice way. It has a primary school, it has a shop, a couple of pubs, a village hall, which is often quite full of people with different community groups meeting. Part of the reason that everybody was so shocked was that this sort of thing just does not happen there.
We look at other intelligence around the community that we can utilise, especially through the Safer Neighbourhoods teams, because they have a finger on the pulse. When they're in the local communities, they know exactly what's going on, who potentially could have done this.
As well as finding who attacked Jane, the team still needs to determine how she died. As they await the post-mortem results, CSIs look for clues in Jane's bedroom.
Not being able to find a cause of death can be quite frustrating. Has someone actually murdered that person? If we can determine the cause of death, it's then possible for us to then either find a weapon or try and link an offender to the crime.
The team investigating thought that she was actually murdered on the bed itself. Everything indicated that everything happened there.
The deceased was found covered with a duvet. Her face was covered. It's really important to then work out, has this contributed to her death? Has the victim been smothered either with the duvet or with a pillow? It's really important for the bedclothes and the pillows to be examined and recovered for any potential trace evidence on them.
Further examination of Jane's bed leads the team to believe Jane's attacker is careless.
There was a baseball cap that was found behind the headboard of the bed. This lady isn't the type of lady that would wear baseball caps, so why is there a baseball cap? Maybe it's been dropped by a relative, maybe it's been there for a considerable period of time, but also maybe that could have belonged to the offender. This then becomes quite a significant find. Potentially, the victim has been sexually assaulted on the bed, and the baseball cap has been either thrown or fallen off behind the headboard. It's a really good source of DNA that would be sent to the lab for urgent DNA examination.
You can't say when it's been placed there or how it's been in that property, but what you can say is who's brought it in there or who hasn't brought it in there.
It had distinctive markings on it, and it was an unusual colour. Has anyone been seen in the area on CCTV wearing this baseball cap? If so, who was that person?
None of Jane's friends or helpers recognised the cap. It's sent for DNA testing.
I'm just checking to see if there's any blood or any hairs within the baseball cap. Most hairs that you find inside a baseball cap are actually broken hairs, so they don't contain a root. It's the actual root where the DNA is mainly held. You can get DNA from hair shafts, but it's significantly reduced and a lot more difficult. If there's no hairs, the best place you've got to look for DNA now is around the sweatband. The best way to examine this is to use mini tapes, and instead of swabbing, the sticky surface actually just takes off the DNA. Forensic scientists would then extract the DNA from the sticky side of that tape.
Given the seriousness of the offence and given that the suspect was at large, the police were having to make some very important decisions early on. We call these fast-track decisions. The decision to fast-track this evidence was a really crucial one.
Just 36 hours after Jane was found, forensic scientists have a result. The tongue bar and baseball cap have returned the same male DNA profile. It's uploaded on the database, and there's a match. To 25-year-old Craig Keogh.
Keogh had previous convictions for theft and burglary, and among those, he had burgled the sports centre in Fleckney Village, but also he had burgled his own parents' house.
The suspect is careless and reckless, total disregard for any sort of respect for anyone at all.
Some young men start to value violence as a way of resolving their difficulties and in fact sometimes their insecurities. There's a lot of really good research now that's looking at that connection, and they're suggesting that the kind of this very fragile male psyche or ego that's been damaged is part of the explanation, but that you've got to then have been socialised to value violence.
Craig Keogh is found to have had a difficult upbringing and is a known drug user. He's currently unemployed and has no fixed address.
The police knew he was a local man and had lived in the village, but they weren't sure where he was at the moment, but they knew that they had to arrest him as soon as they could.
From a forensic perspective, the sooner we can arrest somebody and take some samples from them, the more chance we have of recovering evidence on them or in their property.
We need to get hold of him at the earliest opportunity before he disappears.
He's located to a caravan just 2 streets away from Jane's home.
Someone in the caravan! Police! Open the door! Someone with a dark hair in there. Please open the door!
It's almost quite exciting from a crime scene manager's point of view to know that the police are out trying to find somebody on the evidence that you found in that scene.
Right, don't move, mate. What's your name? Craig, stay there. Come out. Craig. Right, hands behind the back.
It's very calm. There's no kicking and fussing.
Right, at this moment in time, I'm resting.
617, I've got Craig.
There's no fight. He's very calm, especially when he's told about he's been arrested for murder.
If you could have to say anything, we're home. Let's get on one question. Something we should need to learn in court. He's going to do something in the time for his 12-36 hours.
It's interesting to see his reaction, or lack of reaction. He's very nonchalant about it. It's a very, very odd behaviour.
He certainly doesn't appear to be alarmed or distressed or disturbed. Perhaps he even felt that his arrest was inevitable.
Detectives are questioning a 25-year-old man on suspicion of murder. He was arrested at an address in the village just before 1 this afternoon. The man was taken to an unnamed police station in Leicestershire.
Craig Keogh is interviewed under caution.
Have you got any piercings?
On the ear pierced.
No piercings. Okay. Anywhere else?
Yeah, all good.
Your tongue?
Police ask if he knew Jane.
I was walking through the village, and I saw this lady, and her shopping bag broke, and I helped her, and then I carried it to the house with her.
Keogh did walk her dog on a couple of occasions. This is how he became introduced to Jane Hings. He would realise the situation that she was in, that she was a 72-year-old woman that lived on her own.
It could be someone being kind, but by everything else, the tongue stud, the hat, the previous history of burglary, it's all red flags. So he's got knowledge of her habits, knowledge of her vulnerabilities, and knowledge of the layout of the property. So he would know where her jewellery's kept, what jewellery she has, if there's any cash in any locations.
When was the last time you saw her then?
The last time I saw her was Sunday night.
Like, what time would that have been?
I got there for about 10:30.
About 10:30?
Yeah.
During the interviews, he admits being inside the property on the night of the murder. Now you can focus your priorities, you can focus your resources on the suspect. You know the forensics relate to him from the tongue stud. What's the intelligence profile? What do we know about him?
So if we take from 10:30 at night then, through to when you left at 11.
Yeah.
Tell me exactly in detail what happened.
Well, we were watching a little film on the TV, and then she asked me to have sex with her earlier.
Yeah, very shocked. All he's doing is creating a narrative for himself. He's creating a storyline for himself, one that he'd think he could believe himself, and then hopefully someone else will believe him. That's calculated.
Just tell me exactly what she said to you about having sex.
She just said, Craig, we have sex with me. But the first time it started off was about a month ago, when I was out, and she just came into the room naked, and she was like, Craig, come and do it with me and I'll pay you.
How much does she pay you?
She paid me £200.
£200.
And it happened a month ago, the first time, and then she asked me to come back, and a month later, and then it happened again.
I think it's pushed it so far that it's happened several times now. If it was just a one-off, then they won't believe me, but if it happened several times, yeah, they might believe me.
Police is convinced that this offender has committed this crime, but it still needs to be proved beyond reasonable doubt so that it can stand up in court, so a jury can understand what's happened, particularly if they don't have an exact cause of death. In forensic terms, it's quite difficult for us to prove or disprove what's happened because he's admitted being in the house and that he'd had consensual sex with the victim. He's kind of negated the fact that we might find things there.
The investigation team have got to work fast because they need to reassure the community that they've got the right person. So what's their story? And then you tear their story apart.
Tell me exactly in detail what happened.
We were watching a little film on the TV, and then she asked me to have sex with her again.
After being arrested on suspicion of raping and murdering pensioner Jane Hings, 25-year-old Craig Keogh has made a shocking admission.
She's like, I'll pay you more this time. I was like, okay. I didn't think anything of it. And she just fell sick, and then I left her.
He claims Jane has been paying him for sex, but insists he didn't kill her.
One of the main reasons why suspects will do it is because they might know that their DNA will be found. So by saying, well, yes, of course I was there, then they're not implicating themselves in the crime, and they're actually providing themselves with a good reason for being there.
There is a line of excuse there now. You could add an element of doubt there.
With Jane's cause of death unknown, police don't yet have grounds to charge Keogh with her murder.
The perfect world is you have a motive and you have a cause of death. There is no perfect world. So you go in with the information you have and you work with that. As an SIO, you would look at everything. If you're saying he's had some sort of sexual relationship, okay, where's the evidence to support that?
Hours after arresting Keogh, the team receives the initial results of the post-mortem.
There can be some bruising that can be associated with consensual sex, but in sexual assault, there would be significant bruising and damage that will be found.
The pathologist finds Jane's injuries make consensual sex implausible, though they can't be definitive. The cause of death is still unknown.
check if is there any physical evidence that points towards any illness, for example, or any diseases that the victim could have had, which could have led them to die. Also, any signs of poisoning as well. And then if that is not there, then the pathologist then needs to look for evidence of smothering.
The pathologist is able to determine that Jane died between 1:20 and 2:30 a.m. on Sunday morning.
When was the last time you saw her then?
The last time I saw her was Sunday night.
Like, what time would that have been?
I got there for about 10:30.
Keogh claims to have stayed at Jane's for half an hour, leaving at 11 p.m.
It's a ever-evolving scene. There may be other evidence that may be able to narrow down the timescales, in which case you might be able to narrow down when that DNA has been placed there. The suspect said that he'd gone there to watch a movie. Is there something to watch a movie on? Is there a digibox, or is there a video recorder or a DVD player or something? Is there evidence that there is a movie that's been played? If so, does that fit with his story?
Jane's digibox is recovered. There's no record of a film being watched on the night she died.
It's not definitive. However, it's another piece. It's circumstantial evidence, and what you're doing is adding that piece to everything that's going on, and you bring this circumstantial evidence together. You need to identify his movements beforehand. Where had he been? So do we have any CCTV footage of him? Did he use his card anywhere?
Following the financial trail, Craig Keogh is located in a pub on Saturday night between 9 and closing time, just 5 miles away from Jane's home.
Keogh was caught on CCTV at a pub in Oadby at the time that he suggested that he was watching a film at Jane's house.
Detectives immediately notice Keogh's distinctive baseball cap.
Now that is significant. It's the same cap that was discovered and recovered from Jane's house. So he's gone from the pub to the crime scene. The CCTV shows he was very drunk. May have taken other things.
He seemed to be acting in a very strange manner, acting erratically. He had been trying to sell people cocaine, and I think he even tried to sell a couple of the pub managers some of the cocaine as well.
The connection between drugs and violent offending is complex. It's never just the drug has caused it, obviously, because there's lots of people taking all sorts of drugs all the time and don't commit crimes, but it is implicated in some offences, and certainly cocaine is one of the drugs where there's the most robust evidence that there can be a connection in some instances, but it's complicated. There's been some great research done in the United States which shows that if you weren't a violent offender before you started taking cocaine, that you're not likely to suddenly become a violent offender, but that if you've got some violent history prior, that the ingestion of cocaine can kind of escalate your involvement in violent crimes subsequently.
Witnesses tell police Keogh became increasingly aggressive and was overheard loudly complaining.
He's indicated that the night was boring. He wanted something else to do. He apparently had plans with a couple of girls that he was going to go out with. He may have thought that he was going to have some sort of sexual encounter with them, but that didn't happen.
After leaving the pub, Keogh is seen vandalising cars and gardens, kicking a wall and throwing himself into a bush. At 1:10 a.m, CCTV captures him being dropped off home alone.
The suspect got a cab back to his caravan. Instead of going home, decided to walk away and walk towards Jane's house.
It was in the middle of the night. That's her last moments. And the fear is heartbreaking. That particular night, we just had a really long conversation. It must have been about an hour on the phone, telling me more about her life and everything. She was telling me where she worked abroad and things like that, and she was a nanny. So, yeah, it was just, we had a really nice conversation that night. But mainly it talked about Paddy. She was like, if anything happens to me, will you have Paddy? And I was like, of course I'll have Paddy, but you're not going anywhere. You know, yeah, you've had a fall, you're all right, but you're getting better. But then it just gets taken away.
During that conversation and that call, at no point did she mention the suspect coming round.
The next CCTV captures Keogh coming home, only to turn round and head back towards Jane's home. Police believe Keogh may have returned to rape Jane for a second time.
That really massively shocked me. Like, I can't, what goes through someone's head to do that? It's control, isn't it? That's what it is, power.
It's unusual the suspect returned after his initial assault to carry out that kind of attack on a female victim who is clearly more vulnerable. It does say something about his mindset, perhaps because he hadn't got control in other aspects. of their lives.
The team is even more determined to get justice for Jane. After ruling out all other possibilities, the pathologist advises there is only one possible explanation for how she died.
They had a very high index of suspicion, which pointed towards the victim being smothered. It takes about 4 minutes of lack of oxygen to cause lethal brain damage. It's disturbing and quite shocking.
Jane's injuries indicate she was suffocated with a soft object, leaving no apparent marks, making it impossible for the pathologist to be sure. The team suspect she was killed with her duvet or pillow.
Part of the role as a crime scene manager is to put yourself in the mindset of a killer. If you're going to kill somebody or smother somebody with a pillow, how would you hold the pillow? Where would you put your hands? They're going to leave DNA, as well as potential fingerprints. Forensic scientists could potentially interpret that those areas have been used to hold a pillowcase really tightly, potentially over someone's face.
But to prove their theory, first, the team needs to find a way to recover any trace evidence from Jane's bed linen.
Fabrics are virtually impossible to get fingerprints on using traditional methods. Because of the makeup of the fabric and the fact that it's kind of absorbent, it's impossible to develop rich detail.
24 hours into his detention, the team are running out of time to question Keogh.
The custody clock is always ticking. You have got a ticking time bomb to some extent. It's a lot of pressure.
I think there's always a potential with somebody that's committed that kind of a violent offence against an acquaintance that they could go on to do it again.
The team apply for an extension.
You've got to work out what evidence do you have. You can't get everything. You can't get everything. What can you get in order to bring a charge? You've got to get what evidence you can quickly so that you can work on the rest of the forensics and other inquiries in slow time.
Detectives have been given more time to continue questioning a man on suspicion of murder. The superintendent's granted permission for him to continue to remain in custody for a further 12 hours. Further forensic examinations, meanwhile, have been taking place.
With just 12 hours to charge Keogh, the team focuses on linking him to the burglary and Jane's stolen belongings. After being seen heading towards Jane's house in the early hours of Sunday, he's captured again later that morning. At 9:30 a.m. he leaves home with a bin bag.
It's really important for us to try and ascertain what might be in that bin bag. Where was he taking the bin bag?
The team appeals to the community to check their gardens for any suspicious items.
You want to know where is her jewellery. Also, her phone is missing as well, so where is her phone?
The incident room receives a tip-off.
Information is brought to the police's attention that a mobile phone is being dumped in a nearby drain. It's really important to recover this phone as quickly as possible because if it's in a drain, it's probably likely to get wet and can be covered in quite a lot of gunk and mess. So the chances of getting DNA and fingerprints on that is dramatically reduced. But there still may be information that's obtainable from the SIM card. Any photographs or text messages or phone calls are still recorded on that SIM card.
The phone is fast-tracked for testing and confirmed as belonging to Jane. But to link Keogh to the crime scene, the team still needs to locate Jane's stolen jewellery, valued at over £1,000.
Where would they go to dispose of the jewellery? They're not going to dump it, because the whole point of doing a burglary is to take property and sell it. So we would target the pawn shop, speak to them, put photographs of the types of jewellery out there, and work in partnership with them to identify who's brought that jewellery in.
Keogh is traced to Leicester, where he buys a new tongue bar before calling in at a pawnbroker. Officers recover jewellery Keogh pawned for £105. It matches the description of Jane's stolen jewellery.
You're trying to potentially link it back to the victim. You need to think about how you're going to swab it for victim's DNA, so the person that used to wear the crucifix. The area that's important to swab on this, it will be around the chain area, because that's where it's going to be rubbing against somebody's neck, which is actually quite difficult to do because it's a really intricate chain.
Swabs from the crucifix return a 1-in-1 billion match to Craig Keogh.
Why would a 25-year-old want to do that to a 72-year-old woman? How can you do that? It's just wrong.
After pawning Jane's jewellery, Keogh is traced to a bar where he buys his friends drinks and is seen joking around.
What it tells us about him, he just doesn't care. He just doesn't care about his victims, doesn't care about He doesn't care about the consequences of what he's done. He's just a callous killer.
The Crown Prosecution Service authorised police to charge Keogh with burglary, Jane's rape, and murder. With smothering found to be the most likely cause of death, but not definitive, the team still has work to do.
What you don't want is for him to turn around in some sort of defence during a trial and say, actually she died of natural causes. And so we have to prove that actually she was unlawfully killed. There's always that fear the jury will believe him.
The team are convinced that Jane's pillows hold the answer to how she died. But with traditional forensic methods ineffective, they need to find a way to get to the evidence.
It's so key to basically maximise what resources you have, but you have to be careful because you don't have a finite number. So you have to be smart the way you apply your resources. With new technology, not just within the UK but overseas, we've gone leaps and bounds to the days when I first looked at these kind of murders to what we can do now.
Sometimes a crime scene manager has to think outside the box a little bit. There is a method, it's a non-destructive technique, so DNA can still be recovered. The killer in this case grossly underestimated the power of forensic science.
Police investigating the death of pensioner Jane Hings have charged Craig Keogh with her rape and murder. DNA has linked Keogh to the crime scene, but as the trial approaches, they still need to prove their theory that he smothered Jane. Convinced one of her pillows is the murder weapon, the team has identified an innovative forensic technique that could finally reveal vital evidence.
Vacuum metal deposition is one of the few techniques that can actually develop finger marks on fabrics. VMD technology is a coating process. It's quite often used in the commercial world for something as simple as coating greetings cards or the baubles of a Christmas decoration. We're heating up metals, and those metals are evaporating and then depositing on the residues that we leave from our fingerprints on the surface of the evidence.
Using VMD develops 15% more fingerprints than any other method available. Evidence is placed in a vacuum chamber, and tiny amounts of metals such as gold and zinc are heated and vaporize. The vape attaches to evidence, revealing where it's been handled in a reversed image.
Everybody leaves a trace on items that they've handled or touched, and these are made up of different things. So they are amino acids, fats or fat lipids, and water. We're not just looking for finger marks. We're just looking for the presence of where somebody's touched an item. And that's important when you're extracting or swabbing for DNA.
Jane's pillowcases are sent to a team of experts.
So we're simulating the attack. We're going to process this pillowcase in the VMD to identify the areas of touch. VMD is unique in a way that it can be used on all types of evidence. So whether it be paper, fabrics, metals. So when we're talking about metals, knife crime is a big problem. So getting fingerprints off of knives, even when they've been washed, and things like fired ammunition. Your fingerprints are still there.
But until now, no one has attempted to use VMD to identify the presence of a victim and a perpetrator on a pillowcase used in a smothering.
Sometimes you have to try things that you've never tried before, and kind of try something like that. It's really revolutionary. We've explored and exhausted every other technique. Let's try this and see if it works.
We've reached the vacuum level required. Now what we're going to do is to start the heating of the gold. What's happening is that the gold gets absorbed into those biological residues, so the sweat that we've left behind.
Experts use gold as it readily sticks to fats and residues left behind by fingerprints. The results from Jane's pillowcases are chilling.
There are visible fingerprints and visible areas of rich detail on the edge of this pillowcase.
What we're seeing is the grab impressions of where the hands were placed to place the pillow over the person's face.
In the centre, there's also a saliva mark, potentially from our victim's face.
That was not a natural occurring event.
With the fingerprints now revealed, the pillowcase is sent for targeted DNA testing.
The beauty of VMD, it has no detrimental effect on the presence of DNA on the surface.
Using the chemical enhancement identifies particular areas of importance instead of having to examine the whole pillowcase. So the areas that could be DNA swabbed would be these areas on both sides where it's been grabbed, and then also the area in the centre where it's been placed over someone's nose. and mouth. You can get sweat from the nose area and then obviously saliva from the mouth. The DNA profile of the saliva area came back as a victim. The DNA profile towards the edge of the pillow where it looked like it had been grabbed came back as the suspect. This is the murder weapon.
I went to the trial every day. I wanted someone to represent her and be there for her. Obviously, her friends are older and didn't want to go through that and endure that. And it was hard. Like that very first day when he walked in, I'd been that close to him because you automatically think they're monsters, like they're going to look like a monster, but he just looked like a young kid. But then you think about what he's done.
It was horrific for them to sit through and listen to what Keogh had subjected Jane to, through what must have been a terrifying ordeal for her.
Despite the evidence recovered from Jane's pillowcase, Keogh pleads not guilty.
This really challenged me for a bit. Why? Like, with all the amount of evidence they've got on him, firstly, how can he plead not guilty? And then to just sit there and, like, he not acknowledge what he's done or even show remorse for it or any emotion. The only time was when he sort of cried and spoke to his mum. That was it.
Given that there's such compelling evidence against him, it does seem remarkable that he's sticking to the story that it wasn't him. He's trying to get away with a serious violent crime. And some offenders will never admit it. You know, they will never say they did it, sometimes because they just don't want their families to know.
Maybe in his mind, the jury will believe him, because he's pushed enough doubts in there. The jury can see that then. The jury can see, and they can see through people lying.
The offender in this case admitted he was at the scene, but forensically we're able to use incredible techniques to prove exactly what's happened.
The jury retires. It takes only 5 hours for them to return their verdict.
I was told not to show any emotion, which is really hard. Keogh was led into the dark and was just deadpan.
A man's been jailed for life for raping and murdering pensioner Jane Hings. Sentencing him, Mr. Justice Jeremy Baker told Keogh his actions after the crime were callous in the extreme and he'd shown no remorse.
Keogh is sentenced to a minimum of 32 years for Jane's murder and 2 counts of rape.
I've been in journalist for more than 30 years and I have attended lots of murder trials and been to murder scenes, and this one does stick out in my mind. It's such a shocking and brutal murder committed against a vulnerable and defenceless 72-year-old woman in the sanctity of her own house where she thought she would be safe.
We won't really know the truth behind the motive, but the judge believed that he committed the murder in order to hide and cover up the burglary and the rape.
It often revolves around control. There's a body of research that says actually there's things in society, in the very fabric of society, that kind of allow men's negative perceptions of females to be perpetuated. Men that commit these serious sexual acts of violence, they obviously take this to the extreme, but it almost kind of reinforces their views that men are powerful and in control and that women should be in some way subordinate.
To start off with, it was hard because my phone was quiet. She'd call me probably 10, 20 times a day, and someone took that away for nothing.
As promised to Jane, Michelle looked after her beloved Paddy.
When Paddy came to live with us, the first few weeks he was very nervy, loud noises, big bangs. Who only knows what he experienced that night. But eventually he became part of my pack and, lived out the rest of his life.
Jane was beloved by her friends and neighbours. Her death was a huge loss. The community really came together. They set up an online appeal to raise money to pay for Jane's funeral. And they raised the money within days. It gave her a really good send-off where everybody shared memories of Jane and her dog Paddy.
The sea of flowers that were left in front of a house, it was heartwarming because you think nowadays that we don't know our neighbours, we don't care about people, but actually people do care.
Hi, police. What's the emergency? Someone's been murdered down the alleyway with a hammer. I think you might open. Come quick.
When a killer strikes.
He died at 8:15 this morning.
So we've now got a murder investigation.
Catching the suspect falls to a specialist team of detectives.
Wow, it's quite shocking.
His last moments were in this room.
First, they must hunt for clues.
What's that? Could be the murder.
There are messages of interest. I've killed someone.
He was just possessed. He was a man on a mission.
Then,
there we go.
Identify a suspect.
That is spot on.
And bring them in.
There you are! What do you want to let me at? Kill the fort now! Look handcuffs on him, please! You're under arrest for murder, okay?
Next, they must question the suspect to build the case.
Explain to me what's going on.
Separate the truth from the lies.
You said there wasn't a plan. Where were you heading then? How do I know?
And deliver justice for victims and their families.
They are two really dangerous people. The streets will be a much safer place without them.
This time,
wow, it's quite shocking.
A vulnerable man assaulted and left in the burning building.
There we go.
I think that's our suspect. Will detectives be able to track the suspect down?
When you've got a dangerous individual,
the stakes are higher.
Rescue 630 emergency. Hello, I need a fire brigade. What is the problem? A fire in the building. Somebody's in there. Are they able to get out? I don't think so, no. We need to get to the door. Yeah, we've torn out the window, but it's just, the whole room is on fire. Right, okay, we're on the way.
Police and fire crews have been called to a raging inferno at a flat in Hull. Officers arrive and discover a man has been pulled from the fire with life-threatening injuries.
So it's just him. Where was he? In the back bedroom, where the window is that's been pushed out. Cheers. 50-50. Said what it was caused by just chaos, isn't it?
Police officers automatically question passers-by.
Did you see anything when it started? It sounded like two guys arguing back and forth. But I don't know what it was about.
Witness reports of a second person in the flat raise police suspicions.
Was it definitely two different voices that you heard? Yeah. Do you know roughly, did they sound local? Or can you think of any specific accent or anything like that? One of them had an accent, but I couldn't tell you what sort of accent it was. And did the other person, did he sound like local, do you think? I think he wanted the guy to leave, and I assumed when it quieted down that the guy had left. Yeah, well you could definitely distinguish the two different voices apart, yeah. Definitely had two different voices. Yeah. Do you want to look after the back?
The property is now a potential crime scene. The rescued man is taken to hospital, where it's discovered he's been seriously assaulted. He's identified as 54-year-old Anthony Ibbotson. 2 days later, he tragically dies from his injuries. The suspicious house fire is now a murder investigation.
Can you grab everyone, Chris, please, mate?
The case is passed to Homicide's major crime team. Leading the investigation is Detective Chief Inspector Amy Keane Christie.
It's so horrific in terms of the incident itself. He was quite a vulnerable gentleman. We know the victim was assaulted. We've established that there was a witness, and the witness heard more than one voice. It's really key to understand actually what happened and who was in that address at the time.
DCI Keith Christie needs to familiarise herself with the crime scene.
My intention is just to get an overview of the scene externally first.
Yeah.
We can then obviously look at it room by room.
Yeah.
The type of elements of it in terms of the assault, the fire, that's quite unique. So really, hopefully with this visit, it will help us then understand the layout, understand what could have happened within it.
Police believe that the fire started in the bedroom.
Wow. You can see the extent of the fire damage, can't you? It's quite shocking.
The bed of Anthony's was just here with the headboard towards this wall.
Yeah. He's then found by the firefighters and dragged out from just next to the bed on this side, dragged out through the hallway out to the front door. And this room was disturbed and there was items everywhere. And we understand that the fire would have started somewhere around here. It was through this window that the witnesses first saw the fire starting.
There's blood on the wall. You can see the arrows just down here on the wall. He passed away in hospital, but his last his moments or his interactions were in this room really. Yeah. Definitely thought-provoking, isn't it?
It is, yeah. Yeah, it must have been horrendous in this room when it was on fire.
So it's like in this room, obviously, even though the seat of the fire was in the bedroom, the smoke damage is really, really extensive. It's obviously come throughout the whole of the flat. Also, really, I suppose it just shows you the contrast, doesn't it, of this room is really, really tidy as well, and obviously, other than the smoke damage, it's not particularly, messy, but the difference in the scene to the
contrasting to
the bedroom.
The bedroom, yeah.
There's two priorities really. One is to understand the scene itself. The second then is to look at forensic opportunities, especially in the case where we don't have a suspect that's identified. Any scene that has any type of fire damage can really compromise the opportunity for forensics.
Crime scene investigators have taken forensic samples of several items in the flat. These will be fast-tracked to see if any DNA of a suspect can be found.
Okay. Anything else you need to look at while you're here?
No, I don't think so.
It's weird, I suppose, isn't it, how much still smoke there is in the air?
Yeah.
It's this alleyway at the back of here, isn't it? Which is that one? Yeah, you're right.
Detectives have located CCTV from near the victim's house.
This is the camera covering the property address.
Detective Sergeant Sam Cunnington is reviewing the footage in the minutes before and after the fire.
Ah, there we go. So it appears we've got an individual leaving the address shortly after the fire began. That's going to be a key line of inquiry.
It's a breakthrough for the team. But who is the shadowy figure? And did they have a part to play in Anthony Ibbitson's murder? Humberside Major Crime Team are investigating the murder of 54-year-old Anthony Ibbitson, who was pulled from a house fire with signs of being brutally beaten.
Ah, there we go. That's going to be a key line of inquiry.
The team have an image of a suspect leaving the address in the minutes before the fire took hold.
And I think that's him arriving at the scene. And yeah, it goes into the victim's address. So we've got him arriving now. We go back a bit. Definitely two tones on the jacket or hood. Definitely some kind of a marking on the back of the shoulder. White trainers. So the aim now will be to track this suspect to somewhere where we can get a decent facial image.
Detective Constable Danny Crawford is heading to the scene of the fire to hunt for more CCTV cameras.
The initial thing is trying to work out where that person has gone. We're
try and ID this guy. It's literally a tracking from place to place to find out where that person's gone and trying to work out a direction and seeing them on another camera or some more footage. This street is the location of where the incident took place and the subsequent fire. Was it that camera up there? Or it went up the street? Yeah.
Starting at the scene, they follow the suspect's route away from the property in the hope of locating more cameras.
We know he's come up here, even though we see quite a grainy image.
There's another camera just on the left-hand side. This camera, it points onto the car park, so if he is going to walk past...
There's good coverage all the way outside of there, isn't there?
Because it looks like a new camera. Yeah. Good quality footage from it. To check it.
The footage from the CCTV camera is downloaded and given to Detective Sergeant Sam Cunnington in the Digital Media Unit.
This is the store around the corner from the scene. Definitely the same jacket, same white mark on the shoulder. Trainers, happy with. And the next job will be tracking him further along here to see where he ends up going to.
There's another camera.
Wondering if it's possible to have a look at your CCTV.
Over the next few days, using the suspect's direction of travel, officers collect footage from over 50 cameras, which they painstakingly piece together.
And then we have him walking on Beverley Road, up Beverley Road. And then again, past the Beverley Road baths. So he carries on and goes into a phone box. He's definitely in there for a while. So the key thing in this footage is the walk of our suspect. It is a noticeable walk. He's got a bit of a swagger. Every camera we have is just not enough. He's managed to avoid everything facially. He always managed to keep his head down, his face out the imagery.
Detectives track him for over 5 miles to a housing estate in the north of the city.
This is on Brand's home. We can see our suspect in the background walking across, and we know that once we get into this housing estate, there's a large housing estate in Hull. He disappeared. So we still need to find who this person is. It's really frustrating that we haven't got a facial image.
While digital media officers have been collecting CCTV, a number of items from the crime scene have been fast-tracked for DNA testing. They provide any clues.
Are you in a position now to go through them and just confirm what the results were for us?
Yeah. First item was the black wallet, which was from under the head of the bed. There was nothing to identify any other person. The next item was a picture frame. Again, there was nothing to identify any other person that may have touched that item. So we also submitted 3 swabs, which were taken from blood staining on the wall of the bedroom. All those 3 swabs came back as being the blood of Anthony Ibbotson, with no other person,
else.
No other contributor.
We knew due to the fire damage and the scene itself that it may be difficult.
Yeah.
In their efforts to identify their suspect, detectives also swabbed the phone box the suspect was seen going into.
So we sent off a black plastic telephone handset, and there was no DNA recovered from that, which would take us any further forward to identifying a suspect.
It was definitely worth a shot, I think, just to see if we could get some early forensic indication on who the suspect is.
It's another blow for the team.
And obviously if you've come from this direction, then this whole area might end up covered.
So they decide to focus their efforts on the housing estate where he was last sighted, in the belief that he may live there.
this last sighting, we just know that he's come down that path, that he doesn't go back on himself, and we're here. We think he's gone across there. So it's quite a large housing estate with sort of community areas, shops, parks. There's pathways crisscrossing all the way through the houses and shortcuts that...
Like a maze.
When you've got no name, no links, you have no idea who the suspect is. We've got dangerous individual.
Yeah, the stakes are higher.
We are so determined that we're gonna catch them and get to the bottom of the story.
And when you're beginning to constantly come to dead ends and not get anywhere, it just starts to feel like, is this it? Is this as far as we're going with it?
Police still have no idea who the suspect is, and no idea what went on inside Anthony Ibbetson's flat. But the digital media team have made an important discovery. One camera near the victim's property has recorded audio.
And the audio is incredibly important because it provides you like that third eye into the property itself and what was happening. From the audio, we can hear on there that the suspect has a non-local accent. He's asking Anthony about drugs. From our information, Anthony doesn't have a history with drugs in terms of drug supply or holding any type of drugs, so we're not sure whether it was mistaken identity. You can hear threats of violence. It's horrific. The suspect has left Anthony in the address. We know from the audio he was aware of the fire. He's had opportunities since leaving the address to call the police, to call the fire brigade, and he hasn't done. We can hear the level of violence that's displayed, so the quicker we can get hands on and have that person in custody, the better. So if we can't identify them because of the quality of the footage, then we need the public's assistance to be able to find out who they are. I'm Detective Chief Inspector Amy King Christie, and I'm the Senior Investigating Officer who's leading the murder investigation. We need your help. Were you in the area of Freetown Way, Ferrins Way, Springbank or Beverley Road between the hours of 7 p.m. and 8 p.m? If so, we really need to review your dash camera footage. However small, it could be crucial to our investigation.
Along with the appeal to the public, DCI King Christie releases some of the CCTV online.
It's hoped when we release the footage that we firstly obviously identify the suspect involved, but secondly it could be like people that may have been passing by, driving by, seeing something that maybe just didn't seem normal, but also they might have been driving in their vehicle using dash cams, anything to help us that could ID that suspect.
Whilst the team wait for the public to respond, the detectives that were sent to canvass the area have had a possible breakthrough. They've stopped a man matching his description.
He was to walk. I literally stood in front of him and stopped him. He didn't seem bothered, did he? And when I asked for his name, and he said his name, and we heard the accent.
Yeah, the accent.
He threw us, didn't he? We
Yeah,
looked at each other and thinking, whoa. And he showed his working permit.
Mark Freskowski.
But, having no grounds to detain him, they have no option but to let him go.
Oh, it's frustrating. It's really frustrating.
Because it starts feeling like everything's against you.
Is Mark Freskowski the suspect they're looking for? Detectives Homicide's major crime team are working around the clock trying to solve the brutal murder of 54-year-old Anthony Ibbetson.
It's so horrific. We know the victim was assaulted and he was just left inside of a fire.
They've stopped a man with a similar walk to the suspect seen on CCTV.
He said his name and we heard the accent. He threw us, didn't he?
But as the CCTV hasn't shown a clear facial image, they've had no option but to let him go. So they widen their search for more footage.
The area that we lose, this figure on the CCTV, has a shopping centre in the middle. So that's a good area to extend our CCTV parameters. And the shopping centre itself, we know from previous experience, has excellent CCTV.
Detectives begin trawling the CCTV from the day of the attack. And finally, this produces the breakthrough police have been waiting for.
I can see him immediately coming in to the front entrance. A very distinctive walk. You can see the distinctive white logo on the top left of the jacket. It's a big breakthrough.
Now detectives have a clear image of their suspect's face. They can check to see if it is the man stopped in the housing estate.
If we look here at the photograph of the ID card, when we compare it to this piece of footage, now that, to me, is spot on.
Mark Waskowski is now suspect number one. With a potentially violent murderer on the loose, a specialist team armed with tasers are dispatched to arrest him.
Hello there. Please, come down for me. Okay, that's what I've said, yeah. You're under arrest for murder. You don't have to say anything but now. Do not mention something which you later will hide in court. Anything you do say may be given in evidence.
Could this be the man that violently assaulted Anthony Ibbotson and left him in a burning building?
Do you speak English? English? No?
Is there anybody else in the flat, or is it just you?
No.
Just you. I'm just going to give her just take over, just make sure there's no one else here.
Okay. I'll be explained in a minute.
There's nobody else here.
Alright. Officers seize his mobile phone.
I'm going there, my friend.
Before transporting him to Clough Road Police Station.
Take a seat. Good afternoon.
You've been arrested for murder. So you've been identified through some CCTV inquiries and you've been suspected of committing this offence.
Stand up.
With their suspect number one in custody, detectives have 24 hours to bring charges. Detective Constable Steve Story will lead the interviews.
From the initial interview, we want him to provide us with his version of events. We want him to explain where he was at the time of the murder, and we want to get that account in as much detail as we can without giving him any information that we're aware of.
Assisted by an interpreter, how will Waskowski account for himself?
The time is 17:48. We're at Clough Road Police Station in Hull. You've been arrested for murder. You're under arrest for that murder, so tell me about your involvement in that offence.
Расскажите, пожалуйста, по поводу вашего. Это не я.
Okay, so if we go back to that Wednesday, where were you between 7:30 in the evening and 9:30 in the evening?
Дома. Я играл в приставку, подготавливал комнату к покраске, общался с девушкой, ну все как обычно.
Okay. So specifically then between 7:30pm and 9:30pm, what do you remember doing?
PlayStation.
Okay, so you were at home on your PlayStation?
Yes.
Okay.
Я целый день был дома.
With Voskowski claiming he was at home, detectives next show him the shopping centre CCTV.
You see that? So this is CCTV from the North Point Centre from the 29th of November, and it's in the morning at 10:48. You see this person here where my pen's pointing? Is that you?
Yeah.
No, that's not you.
I don't have jacket. The North Face.
You don't have a North Face jacket?
No.
Did you have a North Face jacket on the 29th of November?
Не было.
No.
I have only just black jacket.
We believe that's you.
Но это не я.
It wasn't you.
No.
And this is also from the North Point Centre.
Это не я.
It wasn't you.
Do you recognise the shopping centre?
Узнаю, конечно.
You can obviously see that this person is wearing black trainers with white soles. So you're happy that's not you?
Точно знаете, что это я.
Okay. How many mobile phones do you own?
Один.
So at the time of this fire, at 20:38 hours on the 29th of November, was that mobile phone and SIM card in your possession?
Да, это же мой телефон.
So it would have been at your house then, at your flat?
Я же был дома, да.
Is there anything you want to say before we finish?
Еще хотите добавить?
The time is 11:40. That's the end of the interview.
After almost 2 hours of interview, Voskowski has given nothing away. Police have no forensic evidence that puts him at the scene. But can they link him to the crime by the clothing seen on the footage?
So the clothing is really, really key. So he's got really, really distinctive clothing on. So he has like a 3/4 length black coat, over the shoulder small bag, and then these distinctive black trainers with a white sole. It's really, really key to get those because that will help us prove the man on the footage is Voskowski.
Whilst officers search Voskowski's flat for the coat and the shoes, detectives decide to re-interview him.
What we're going to do is show you some more CCTV now.
This time, they focus in on the events of the night to see if he'll change his story.
So this is now Beverley Road, walking out of the city, saying that's the same person in the black trainers with the white soles and the North Face jacket. So we believe that's the same person who you saw in St. Stephen's and Tesco's.
Но он похож на половину людей в городе.
Yeah, but it doesn't look like half the people in this city.
This is a figure walking goes into the victim's address. Again, was that you, Mark?
Нет.
We see a figure coming out of the address.
That's about 12 minutes before the fire brigade were called. So if that was you in the address,
Нет.
now's your opportunity to tell me what was happening when you left that house.
Нет, почему если это не я?
So what we know is that a witness described what is described as an overheated discussion. Were you involved in that discussion?
Если меня там не было, как я могу быть в чем какой-то разговор, если я ничего не понимаю?
Time's 17:40. It's the end of the interview. Mark Voskowski at the moment is very calm. He's not giving much away. Given the severity of the allegation being put to him, he sat quite calmly during that interview. Doesn't look too upset by the allegations that we've put to him.
Teams searching his flat have reported back, and it's not good news.
At this stage, we haven't recovered, have we, the footwear or the jacket, the long North Face style jacket, kind of 3/4 length one that we haven't found either.
But during the search, police did find a damaged CCTV camera at the back of his property.
So this is the back garden.
And crucially, it overlooks his bins.
We observed that this camera had been removed, so we obtained the last footage from this camera, and it shows a figure making one attempt to dislodge it from the wall, and when that's unsuccessful, comes back and moves it, and that's the last footage that's captured from that camera.
So for me, really, it's definitely an inference that he's destroyed the camera in order to not be captured, putting those evidence items, that clothing, in the bins.
Absolutely.
The team only have circumstantial evidence. With the clock ticking down, will they be able to charge Voskowski with murder? Or will he walk free? Detectives have a suspect in custody for the murder of 54-year-old Anthony Ibbotson. The team have been unable to find clothing worn by their suspect, Mark Voskowski, on the day of the fire.
This is what I reckon is our suspect.
But they have continued to review CCTV footage from a shopping centre to track him in the hours before the murder.
He's gone into a jeweller's. And he hands something over. And it looks like it's a receipt. We need to find the receipt.
Finding the receipt would prove that it is Voskowski in the footage. Whilst officers try to locate it, the team have also been analysing data from his mobile phone.
He's told us that his phone is always with him and that he's at his home address the whole day. So we can see that at or before 18:34 in the evening, suspect's mobile phone is now connecting to a mast in the vicinity of the city centre. So then, right at the time of the assault and fire, at the time that took place, we can see that the suspect's mobile phone is very close to the offence location.
With this new evidence, police secure a custody extension of 12 hours to challenge him in a further interview.
When you use your phone, it communicates with masts, and that allows us to put your phone in a particular area when it's in use. So analysis has been carried out of your phone, okay, and that shows that on the 29th of the 11th, your phone is shown to be in the Hull city centre area. Can you explain why that is?
No comment.
We've shown you CCTV of a male we believe to be you in the Hull city centre. So this analysis supports our belief that you were in Hull city centre on the evening of the 29th of November.
No comment.
Now he's starting to shut down on us. He's not answering these questions and he's reverting to no comment. He's not speaking. It's quite telling, really. It can be that he's unable to answer the questions based on the new evidence that we're putting to him. We can see on the 29th, the 11th, at or before 1943, your phone is communicating with a mast in that area. So tell me why that is.
No comment.
Is it because you're in that area?
No comment.
This fits with the CCTV we've shown you?
No comment.
Is that because it is you on that CCTV?
Yeah.
Not you. So who's got your phone then?
No comment.
Suspect's body language has changed. It became a little bit more withdrawn. What we're going to do, Mark, is show you some CCTV footage.
Detectives sense the time is right to further challenge his account with the audio of the assault.
we believe you've gone to his address, assaulted Mr. Ibbotson over a period of time, after which a fire has started, and you've left the address. Your phone's in that area, and we've shown you CCTV footage, including footage which shows a face, and we believe that's you. So is there any explanation you want to give before we finish?
No comment.
Time's 22:24. That's the interview.
Waskowski is still not talking to police. But in the hunt for the receipt seen in CCTV footage, detectives have made a significant discovery.
So we've obviously got Waskowski. Looks like he's trying to make some form of return. And obviously we can see, can't we, from those images, little Champion bag. When we conducted the warrant at his home address, we recovered the Champion bag and sent that off for forensics. And it was actually when we've done the forensic examination, we've actually recovered this receipt here shown on the screen from that bag, from within it. By having the receipt in the bag, that timelines him really, really well. That shows us really that obviously the man on the footage is Waskowski.
With proof that Waskowski has lied to detectives, they decide to go to the Crown Prosecution Service. Will they agree to charge him with murder?
It's Detective Chief Inspector Amy King Christie. How are you? The CPS have authorised a charge for murder, and Waskowski has been remanded into custody. It's definitely a relief for us in terms of having Waskowski remanded. It means that he then can't cause any further harm to anybody else. But really that's where the hard work starts in terms of case building and making sure not only we can get a charge, but we actually can get a conviction at court.
The team still don't have any forensic evidence. But further testing has been conducted on items from Anthony Ibbotson's flat and Waskowski's address. Can they provide the final piece of the jigsaw?
Swabs were taken from some planks which were recovered from Anthony Ibbotson's home address, and a mixed DNA profile was obtained. And in that profile, both Anthony Ibbotson and Mark Waskowski were well represented.
The scientist is happy to say that some of that cellular material
has come from Mark Waskowski. Yeah.
That's fantastic news. That is really, really positive. So that for me shows that Mark Waskowski was present inside that flat.
Yes. The other significant forensic return that we've had relates to a black hooded top. This item was seized from Mark Waskowski's home address. Blood staining's been found on the left cuff, and this blood relates to the victim, Anthony Ibbotson. So it's a positive link between our victim and our suspect.
The evidence strengthens the police case. And crucially, they've also received the pathologist's report.
Mr. Ibbotson's death was due to the combined effects of burns and inhalation of products of combustion following an assault in which he sustained significant head and neck trauma, which rendered him unconscious and unable to flee the ensuing fire from the property.
Had he have not been assaulted to the degree that he had been, he would have been able to get up, leave.
Absolutely.
And obviously then wouldn't have obviously got those other injuries.
Yeah. It clearly links both the assault and the fire to his death.
Together, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So the importance of the pathology report is that it allows us to understand the level of injuries, how those have occurred, and also the fact that because of the injuries to his head, he was unable to actually leave the flat when it was on fire, ultimately leading obviously to his death. With the evidence that we currently hold, it's really strong, so I would hope that any jury would convict Waskowski of this offence. Myself and the investigation team are really happy with the outcome, not only because Waskowski has been held to account for his actions, but also because it provides a bit of comfort to the family. At least they have justice for